My name's Ava Sinclair, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you my family was dependable. Not in a cozy, hug you every day kind of way, but in a we show up for the important things kind of way. We didn't do heart to hearts, we didn't talk about feelings over dinner, but we had rituals. Sunday lunch, Christmas Eve matching pajamas. I used to tuck a $50 bill into birthday cards, and honestly, for most of my life, that was enough. My parents, Sandra and Rick, were the blueprint of small town stability. They remained married, having been high school sweethearts. He was a regional bank manager for decades. She was the queen of spreadsheets, coupon books, and PTA meetings until she retired early. My sister Julia, perfect. Corporate attorney, married to a surgeon, has a house with a wine fridge and a golden retriever named Bentley. Me? I was the rebel with a whisk. I own a bakery on Main Street. The walls are buttercream yellow. I constantly dust my aprons with flour. I wake up at 4:30 every morning and roll out dough while the world is still asleep. I built it from scratch. Every tray of croissants, every espresso pulled, every hand-lettered chalkboard sign, that's me. It's not glamorous, and there were weeks I couldn't pay myself, but it's mine. So when I say the birthday card didn't come, it's not about the money. It's about the pattern breaking. Each year, without fail, a card would arrive. Hallmark glitter, mom's cursive, dad's scrawled, "Proud of you, kid." It sounds silly, but it meant something. Even when we didn't talk much, even when things were tense, those cards meant they saw me. The mailbox was empty on the day I turned 30. Initially, I believed there might be a delay. Maybe it would show up a day late. Then a week passed, then two. I dug through piles of mail and checked behind the furniture like it might have slipped through a crack. Nothing. I called Mom. I didn't call Mom because of the card, but rather because I couldn't calm down. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she chirped. She spoke a bit too enthusiastically. "Thanks, Mom. I just realized that I didn't receive your card this year. Did your card disappear in the mail?" A pause. "Oh, I must have forgotten. Things have just been hectic." Hectic? The woman has been organizing her spice rack alphabetically since 1993. "Hectic how?" I asked. She chuckled nervously. "Oh, your dad's had some back issues, and the HOA is being ridiculous again. Just life, you know?" I didn't know. Her tone lacked the familiarity of daily life. Still, I brushed it off. I told myself not to read into it. But that night, I stared at my ceiling for hours, my stomach twisting. A week later, Julia called. That in itself was odd. We usually just text memes or passive-aggressively like each other's Instagram stories. "Ava," she said, her voice clipped. "Did you talk to Mom and Dad recently?" "Last week. Why?" "They canceled the cabin trip." "What? No way! They never canceled the cabin. Dad once attended the cabin trip despite having a sprained ankle and a sinus infection." "They said his back is worse than usual, but I don't buy it." And then she lowered her voice. "Something's going on. Have you noticed?" I had, but I hadn't wanted to admit it. "They've been weird. Avoiding questions, ignoring messages. I asked for a loan just to cover a burst pipe at the bakery, and they said things were tight." "Wait, tight? Haven't they recently remodeled their kitchen?" "And buy a new car? Yeah." We both fell silent, and in that quiet, something unspoken settled between us. We were both scared. We weren't afraid of financial loss. We were afraid of losing the people we believed to be our parents. That weekend, I stopped by the house, just to drop off some muffins. That's what I told myself. But really, I wanted to see for myself. I was eager to experience the atmosphere firsthand, to catch a glimpse of whatever shadow was creeping in. The front porch was cluttered with Amazon boxes. The landscaping was different, a new stone path and freshly planted hydrangeas. The inside, even more jarring. The living room underwent a makeover. The living room featured brand new leather couches. The living room now boasts a sophisticated glass coffee table. The artwork was clearly not from TJ Maxx. Wow, I said, trying to keep the tone light. Just a little refresh. We figured why not. Must have been pricey. She waved me off. We got good deals. Dad appeared in the doorway. Hey, kiddo, try one of those muffins. I handed him the bag, but I couldn't stop staring. He looked worn out. He appeared more than just elderly. He appeared utterly exhausted. That night, I couldn't sleep again, so I started digging. Public records, property taxes, loan histories. They'd remortgaged the house. Twice. I texted Julia. She called immediately. Jesus, Ava, why would they do that? I don't know, but I'm starting to think they're in trouble, big trouble. And that's when we decided to find out the truth.
It started with water soaking through my shoes. It was a Tuesday in late March, still cold enough in Oregon to see your breath in the morning. I unlocked the bakery at 5:15 a.m., ready to prep the morning batch, and found the kitchen under 2 inches of water. A pipe had burst sometime overnight, flooding everything. The ruined bags of flour were everywhere. The tile felt like wet cardboard beneath my feet. I stood there, staring at the mess, my apron still tied around my waist, my heart sinking with every squish of my boots. By 7 a.m., the city inspector confirmed the worst. The fault was on our side. This implied that we lacked insurance coverage, received no compensation, and faced a hefty repair bill. The cleanup cost us $3,000. Another $5,000 lost in revenue while we shut down for nearly 2 weeks. I ran numbers until my eyes burned. Rent was due, payroll was non-negotiable. I hadn't paid myself in a month. That was the moment I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. I called my parents. Just a loan, I told myself. This was not a handout. I needed a little boost to get through this. They'd always said they had an emergency fund, just in case. Well, this was my case. Hey, Mom, I said, pacing outside the bakery while the plumbing crew inside made more noise than an orchestra in a thunderstorm. I was wondering if I could borrow a little money, just to make it through the month. There was a pause. Not shocked, not concerned, just calculation. How much are we talking about? 2,000? Maybe 3. I can pay it back in 6 weeks. I've got a catering contract lined up. Ava, honey, she interrupted, her voice suddenly tight. We'd love to help, but things are a little tight right now. Maybe you could ask Julia. My heart dropped. Tight? You just remodeled your kitchen, and Dad's driving a brand new Lexus. Another pause. This time, the pause is extended. We've had some unexpected expenses, insurance things, some medical bills. She was lying. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. The realization weighed heavily on my stomach. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there and stared at the street, the wind blowing bits of flour off my jacket. That evening, I called Julia. We hadn't always been close. We'd been opposites since birth. But something in her voice that night matched what I was feeling. They said no too? She asked. They didn't just say no, they said tight, like they were barely scraping by. Julia was quiet for a second. Then she said, I checked public records this afternoon. They've taken out a second mortgage on the house. What? And a third. Both incidents occurred within the past 5 years. And get this, Mom has a credit card in your name. That's not possible. I never. Capital One, opened in 2020. The debt stands at $12,000, sent to collections last fall. Ava, you didn't open that? I sat down. I took a seat on the floor of the bakery. I felt the cold tile press against my back. No, I didn't. And that's when it started to unravel. The next few days were a blur. Julie and I compared our notes as if we were constructing a legal case. She pulled credit reports and tax filings. I dug through old paperwork at their house when I went over to water the plants. We weren't imagining it. They had used our names. They had stolen our social security numbers. They had also utilized our credit histories. I thought of every time I'd worried about making rent, every time I chose generic cereal over name brand cereal. I consistently declined vacations and new shoes as I firmly believed in creating something myself, truthfully. Meanwhile, my parents had used my name to build their lies. That Saturday, I showed up at their front door unannounced. Mom opened the door with her usual practiced smile, like I was a guest she hadn't been expecting. She smelled like lavender and vanilla, her signature scent. I used to find it comforting. Now it made me sick. "Hi, sweetheart," she chirped. "Everything okay?" I walked past her without answering. "Where's Dad?" "He's in the study." Perfect. I found him at his desk, typing something that looked like a grocery list. He looked up. His eyes flickered. "Ava, what a surprise. Did you take out a credit card in my name?" He froze. He hesitated for a brief moment, but I saw it. Like a camera flash that reveals guilt. Don't lie. Please, just don't." Mom appeared behind me. "Ava, let's talk calmly. We didn't mean to... You didn't mean to get caught, or you didn't mean to screw me over? Because both seem pretty intentional." Their faces collapsed. It was like watching two towers fall in slow motion. "We thought you were okay," Dad whispered. "We didn't think you'd notice." "I wasn't okay. I'm still not. I've been drowning while you were out here upgrading countertops." They said they were sorry. They admitted that they were in a desperate situation. They said the situation was never supposed to be like this. But they never explained why they didn't just ask. They didn't place their trust in me when it came to the truth. Julie and I agreed. It was time to put everything out in the open. We invited them to Sunday dinner. Same table, same chairs, different agenda. This time we were coming with the receipts.
If you've ever felt the weight of a room before anyone says a word, you know what that Sunday felt like. Julie and I sat in the car outside our parents' house for a full 5 minutes, neither of us moving. It was like crossing a threshold. We both knew once we stepped through that front door, we couldn't come back. We weren't just daughters anymore. We were prosecutors, witnesses, victims. "Ready?" Julia asked, though her voice cracked. I nodded. Not even a little. But we got out of the car anyway. Inside, everything looked the same. Mom had set the table with her wedding china, the kind with the delicate gold rim no one was allowed to microwave. There were cloth napkins, the excellent wine glasses, and a roast that smelled like rosemary and tension. "Girls," Mom called from the kitchen, her voice overly cheerful. "Sit down. Everything's just about ready." Dad gave us a nod from the dining room, already seated, swirling a glass of Cabernet like he hadn't helped destroy our credit scores. We took our seats, and Julia slid a thick envelope onto the table like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom. "We need to talk," she said. Silence. I looked at them, my parents, the people who once taped my dance recitals and cheered at soccer games, and I told them everything we knew. "We know about the credit cards," I said, my voice low. "The mortgages. The accounts are in our names. The lies." Dad's wine glass stopped midair. Mom blinked, her smile faltering. She looked from me to Julia, then back. "I don't know what you think you found, but..." "Don't," Julia cut in. Don't pretend this is a misunderstanding. We've seen the statements. We've talked to the credit agencies. Mom exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath for a year. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she said quietly. It started with just one loan, just to consolidate some bills. We were going to pay it back. But you didn't, I said. And then you used our names, Julia added. Mine. Ava's. Without asking. We didn't think it would affect you, Dad said, rubbing the back of his neck. You were doing fine. You have your business. Julia has her job. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so absurd I didn't know how else to react. You don't think a maxed out credit card in my name affects me? I couldn't get a loan for new equipment. I almost lost my lease. And I got denied refinancing because someone defaulted on a student loan I never took out. We were desperate, Mom whispered. No, you were dishonest. We sat in silence for a long moment, the roast cooling on the table. No one touched the food. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. What do you want us to do? I looked at Julia. We had agreed on this the night before. You're going to call the credit bureaus, I said. You're going to admit what you did, in writing. And you're going to stop using our names for anything, ever. You'll need to start paying it back, Julia added. Whatever you can, every month. You don't get to just walk away from this. Mom started to cry, loud, heaving sobs that used to undo me as a kid. However, that's not the case tonight. She said between sobs, You don't understand. We did everything for this family. We sacrificed so much. I stood. No, you made choices. And then you made us pay for them. Dad looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. We're not evil people. I know. But you did awful things. And it's time to make them right. We left them at the table, roast untouched, wine half drunk. Our childhood home was no longer a haven of safety, but a place where the truth finally pierced through the lies. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering when the shift had happened, when the people who taught me to tell the truth stopped doing it themselves. However, the nature of deception never manifests itself abruptly. It drips in slowly, drop by drop, until one day the cup overflows and you're drowning. We weren't drowning anymore. We were swimming for shore. If you've ever felt the weight of a room before anyone says a word, you know what that Sunday felt like. Julie and I sat in the car outside our parents' house for a full 5 minutes, neither of us moving. It was like crossing a threshold. We both knew once we stepped through that front door, we couldn't come back. We weren't just daughters anymore. We were prosecutors, witnesses, victims. Ready? Julia asked, though her voice cracked. I nodded. Not even a little. But we got out of the car anyway. Inside, everything looked the same. Mom had set the table with her wedding china, the kind with the delicate gold rim no one was allowed to microwave. There were cloth napkins, the excellent wine glasses, and a roast that smelled like rosemary and tension. Girls, Mom called from the kitchen, her voice overly cheerful. Sit down, everything's just about ready. Dad gave us a nod from the dining room, already seated, swirling a glass of Cabernet like he hadn't helped destroy our credit scores. We took our seats, and Julia slid a thick envelope onto the table like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom. We need to talk, she said. Silence. I looked at them, my parents, the people who once taped my dance recitals and cheered at soccer games, and I told them everything we knew. We know about the credit cards, I said, my voice low. The mortgages. The accounts are in our names. The lies. Dad's wine glass stopped midair. Mom blinked, her smile faltering. She looked from me to Julia, then back. I don't know what you think you found, but don't. Julia cut in. Don't pretend this is a misunderstanding. We've seen the statements. We've talked to the credit agencies. Mom exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath for a year. It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said quietly. "It started with just one loan, just to consolidate some bills. We were going to pay it back." "But you didn't," I said. "And then you used our names," Julia added. "Mine. Ava's. Without asking." "We didn't think it would affect you," Dad said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You were doing fine. You have your business. Julia has her job." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so absurd I didn't know how else to react. "You don't think a maxed out credit card in my name affects me? I couldn't get a loan for new equipment. I almost lost my lease. And I got denied refinancing because someone defaulted on a student loan I never took out." "We were desperate," Mom whispered. "No, you were dishonest." We sat in silence for a long moment, the roast cooling on the table. No one touched the food. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "What do you want us to do?" I looked at Julia. We had agreed on this the night before. "You're going to call the credit bureaus," I said. "You're going to admit what you did, in writing. And you're going to stop using our names for anything, ever. You'll need to start paying it back," Julia added. "Whatever you can, every month. You don't get to just walk away from this." Mom started to cry, loud, heaving sobs that used to undo me as a kid. However, that's not the case tonight. She said between sobs, "You don't understand. We did everything for this family. We sacrificed so much." I stood. "No, you made choices. And then you made us pay for them." Dad looked up at me, eyes bloodshot. "We're not evil people. I know. But you did awful things. And it's time to make them right." We left them at the table, roast untouched, wine half drunk. Our childhood home was no longer a haven of safety, but a place where the truth finally pierced through the lies. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering when the shift had happened, when the people who taught me to tell the truth stopped doing it themselves. However, the nature of deception never manifests itself abruptly. It drips in slowly, drop by drop, until one day the cup overflows and you're drowning. We weren't drowning anymore. We were swimming for shore. The Monday after that dinner felt like waking up in someone else's life. My body was still mine, but nothing else felt familiar. Nothing felt familiar. Not my kitchen, not my phone screen filled with unread texts, not even the smell of coffee. Everything had a strange echo, like the world was moving one step ahead of me and I couldn't catch up. I didn't go to work. I didn't even leave my apartment. I stayed in bed with the curtains drawn, my phone buzzing every hour as if it were a clockwork. The first messages were from Mom. "We didn't mean to hurt you." Then Dad, "We're trying to make this right." By mid-afternoon, the guilt morphed into deflection. "We raised you better than this." I didn't reply. Grief has a strange way of showing up when you feel most hollow. You think you'll scream, maybe cry, but instead, you just stare. Like if you sit still long enough, the betrayal will untangle itself. It doesn't. Julia came by that afternoon. She didn't ask permission. She just walked in with iced coffee and a folder full of forms. That's Julia. She grieves with structure. "Freeze your credit," she said, dropping a printed checklist on the kitchen table. "File an identity theft affidavit. We need to talk to a lawyer." I nodded. No words. I felt a heavy thud in my heart. She sat down across from me. She gazed directly into my eyes. "Ava, we're going to fix this. It's going to take time, but we'll get there, together." It wasn't just the words. It was how she said them. She conveyed meaning in every syllable. She made me feel as though I was no longer alone. That night, I finally listened to their voicemails. There were 8. Mom's voice was emotional, too emotional. She swung between guilt and justification like she was hoping one would land. "We thought we were helping.
We didn't know how awful it got. We love you. But she never said the words I needed most. I'm sorry. The following week was consumed by an overwhelming amount of paperwork. Julia and I bounced between banks and credit agencies, our names trailing behind us like broken receipts. We sat in stale conference rooms explaining our situation to strangers who nodded with professional pity. This happens more often than you'd think, one bank manager said. Family fraud is hard to prosecute because most people can't stomach pressing charges. Yeah, I thought. A stranger stealing from you is one thing. It's another thing when it's your mother. Then Grandma found out. It wasn't from us that she found out. She'd discovered it herself. She'd called the house to ask why her monthly check hadn't cleared. Mom gave her some vague story about the bank holding the funds. Grandma didn't buy it. She never buys lies. That woman ran 3 rental properties until she was 72. She knows when numbers don't add up. She called me later that afternoon. "Ava," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I want you to come over, now." So I did. She greeted me with lemon cookies, the kind she only made when she knew I was hurting. We sat in her sunroom, with the windows open, spring air fluttering the curtains. I told her everything. No sugarcoating, no editing. She paid attention to every unpleasant detail. She didn't interrupt once. She simply sat there listening, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes never leaving mine. When she finished, she said, "I'm so sorry they did this to you. You didn't deserve that." And that, more than all the bank meetings, all the credit reports, all the spreadsheets, broke me. This was the first time that someone in our family expressed this sentiment without making it about themselves. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with an envelope. "This was supposed to be your graduation gift, but your parents told me they had already given you something better." I believed them. Inside was a check. It wasn't just money. It was restoration. It served as evidence that someone still had faith in me. I started to protest. She cut me off. "This isn't charity. This is justice. Take it." So I did. I didn't cry. I didn't cry immediately. But when I got home and saw my busted oven, the one I'd been too broke to replace, I did. Now I could finally repair it. And that felt like the first real breath I had taken in weeks. Life didn't snap back overnight, but it began to shift. I reopened the bakery, slowly, cautiously. The process was carried out one batch at a time. Customers returned, smiles returned. I started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Julia and I became a unit. Trauma had forged a new kind of sisterhood. We texted constantly. We met twice a week just to vent, plan, or eat Thai food on her couch. One afternoon, weeks later, Julia forwarded me an email from Dad. Subject: accountability. Attached was a PDF, a spreadsheet. Every debt they owed, every creditor, payment plans, call logs, notes. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't begging. It was just honest. There was a note at the end. "We know we can't undo what we did, but we're trying to make it right. We are not doing this for your benefit. We're doing this for ourselves." I didn't respond. I didn't even cry, but I saved the file. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something new. Not forgiveness, but possibility.
Time is a strange thing. It doesn't heal everything like people say. It just dulls the edges, rounds off the corners of pain so they don't stab you every time you breathe. Months passed after that email from Dad. Seasons changed. The bakery got busy again. People came in for their usuals, for birthday cakes, for something warm on a cold morning. No one knew what I'd been through. No one needed to. But I did. And so did Julia. We fell into a rhythm. Weekly check-ins, shared calendars. Our relationship, which had once been polite and occasional, turned into something solid, something real. We were the only ones who knew the full truth, and that made us each other's safety net. As for our parents, well, that was more complicated. They sent updates. Not often, not pushy, just quiet proof of effort. Debt balances shrinking, counseling sessions attended. Mom started a bookkeeping job part-time. Dad took on some consulting work. They never sought forgiveness, only acknowledgement. One day, Julia got a letter. It was a genuine letter, handwritten, from Mom. It wasn't perfect. It still carried a tinge of guilt that made you cringe, but it had something new: ownership. We failed you. We believed we were acting correctly, or at least doing our best to survive with the knowledge we had at the time. But we see now how wrong that was. We're not asking for your trust back. We're trying to earn it. If that takes years, we understand. That night, Julia and I sat on my balcony with wine and chocolate cake. We didn't say much at first. We simply observed the sky's shifting hues. "You believe them?" she asked finally. I didn't answer right away. I thought about it, about how I wanted to believe. I reflected on how my past experiences with belief had left me feeling. However, genuine transformation is often characterized by its quiet nature. Change is quiet, inconvenient, uncomfortable, and that's what they were showing now. "I believe they're trying," I said. "And for now, maybe that's enough." 3 months later, we agreed to meet them. Neutral ground. The meeting took place at a downtown coffee shop. Public, safe. There were no tablecloths, pot roasts, or fake smiles. The only things present were lattes and an awkward reunion of 4 individuals. They looked older. Not just from time, but from effort. They appeared to have been burdened with embarrassment, which they eventually let go of for a brief moment. "Thank you for coming," Dad said. His voice was soft, careful. He seemed to avoid frightening us away. We talked. We initially discussed mundane topics, such as the weather, the bakery, and the twins. But slowly the conversation cracked open. They told us about their recovery, their therapist. They established new guidelines for managing their finances. They even joked about budgeting. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't comfortable, but it was honest. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I just felt settled. Weeks turned to months. One dinner became 2, then 3. Still cautious, but a new kind of cautious. This new level of caution entails setting clear boundaries. Mom still sends texts, sometimes with recipes, sometimes just thinking of you. Dad leaves bakery reviews online under a fake name. I know it's him because he always calls my croissants divine. And me? I'm not the same person who walked into that dinner all those months ago. I'm more guarded, but I'm stronger too. My business is thriving. I hired a second baker. I sleep more, laugh more, trust less, but love smarter. Julia has become my person. She's the person I reach out to when the oven malfunctions or when a customer makes a proposal over a chocolate ganache cupcake. We've earned each other. We even started a new tradition: quarterly family meetings. We hold these meetings exclusively for the 4 of us. Our goal is not to revisit the past, but to engage in open communication, transparently. We discuss our current situation and our future goals. Grandma joins sometimes. She still makes lemon cookies, she still doesn't tolerate nonsense, but she smiles more now. She seems to understand that we are in a good place. Not perfect, not untouched, but okay. Forgiveness isn't a destination. It's 1,000 little moments. Answering a text. It involves taking a deep breath. It's about leaving the door unlocked, even just a crack.
It's not about pretending the hurt never happened. It's about choosing to live beyond it. And I did. 1 year after the dinner that shattered everything, I stood at the bakery window and watched my parents walk past. They didn't see me. They were just two people holding hands, talking softly, and sharing a paper bag of croissants. I didn't wave. I didn't open the door. But I smiled. Because this time, I was finally, truly free.
What did you learn from the experience? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest betrayals can ultimately lead to growth and renewal. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes losing what you thought you had is the beginning of finding something